Hi everyone, today's video I'll be showing you how to do this abstract cloisonné type design, and I used all pigments in this design except for the black. I did use a gel polish for that black border, but all the rest of these are using pigments, and the pigments that I used are some CND Additive Pigments. I used deep blue and cerulean blue. And these both, I like these because these have a slight shimmer to them, both of these blues. And the ones that didn't have a shimmer, I did add some of the CND sparkle pigment to it. For the pink and red, I used Haute Pink. Again, this has a slight shimmer to it. And bright red pigment, which is just their straight red matte pigment, which I did add some shimmer to. I also used their yellow pigment, and again for the matte pigments I did use their for the red and yellow here I did use some pink gold sparkle, which I just added a tiny little bit, mix that up with it just to match the other pigments. And I've mixed those up on my tile here with a little bit of gelish Top It Off top coat. And the green is a combination of this Ranger ink brand Perfect Pearls in Festival Green, and then I added a little bit of some neon green pigment. And again, to that I added a little bit of that sparkle pigment. Now to paint in these smaller areas, or the black border, I did use, for the outline, I did use the Moira black foil gel. The reason I use this is because when it cures, it has a very sticky a tacky layer when it cures. It's not a oily or slippery surface, which you don't want when you're applying your pigments into it for the gold outline part. And this is the gold that I used for the outline part. Applied that onto the top of the sticky layer. But you can use any gold, very fine. It must be a fine gold pigment. I found these at my local Texas Art Supply. A beautiful kind of champagne gold. You can certainly, whichever look that you're going for, you can certainly use it. But again, don't use any glitter type gold. It must be a very, very fine gold. And you can see what the champagne gold looks like here on this design that I've done with the gradient sample. You can see the difference between that bright yellow gold and more of a softer, almost like a white gold. Now to paint my design, I'm using my Crystal Nails long brush. I'm also going to use that to fill in the areas on the design. And on my sample nail, I do have 2 coats of Cuccio Verona lace, a beautiful white. And I have topped that with 1 coat of Luxa matte top coat. And the reason I've done this is because when I apply that gold pigment into the black outline, I don't want it to stick to the white. And if you use a matte or file, buff your surface after you polish it, give it, buff it until all the shine is gone. That should work for you as well. Then you should be able to simply brush off any excess pigment that is not going to stick to your tacky layer. And once I have finished the design, I will top it with a coat of the Accents top coat. Actually 2 coats, since I would want my design to last. So again, I've mixed those pigments up with some gelish Top It Off. You can use whatever top coat that you like. You don't have to use Top It Off. I just prefer it. It's a little looser, a little bit thinner than a lot of top coats. So I just prefer the way that that applies. So once again, I'm going to use my Moira Black Foil Gel. And again, you really do need a gel. It doesn't have to be black, but whatever gel that you're going to paint your initial design with, that you're going to apply your pigment into, it really needs to have a super sticky, tacky layer once it's cured. Otherwise, you're just going to smear that pigment around it and it's not going to look good. So I'm just placing kind of little guide dots here just to kind of help me get the outline more even than if I were to just eyeball it. So that's what I've done here. And I'm just going to start with my border outline. I do like how it almost looks like molten gold when you apply this into the cured gel. I like that kind of look. Now we're just going to start our abstract design here. You can do whatever design that you prefer. Obviously, it's whatever your imagination will go for here. And I've cured this for 90 seconds in lamp because I want this to be the absolute stickiest tacky layer that I could get. You can see this beautiful bright gold pigment, how fine that it is. I'm going to use a sponge applicator. I'm going to take a little bit out of the pot and then I'm going to tap the excess into that because you do not need a lot of pigment for this. The least amount that you can use to completely cover the black is probably best here. You don't want it sticking in areas that you don't want it to. And I'm not going to be heavy-handed here. I'm going to lightly pat it into that sticky layer and make sure I get a complete coverage on it. I'm trying not to brush over. As far as with the sponge, I'm trying not to scrub over it. I don't really need to get it to stick. And then I'm using the brush end of my applicator to remove the excess pigment. And then I'm going to pat that pigment, make sure it's really secured into that sticky layer. Now if you get any gold, you can see there's might be little spots where you've got some excess gold pigment. If it's in areas that you're going to cover with your other pigments, it's not something you really need to worry about. If it's in an area, say on the outside of that border, then you can remove that with a brush and some alcohol and it'll come right off. It should be just fine. So when you've got that taken care of, we're going to fill in that border area. I'm going to use some Moira Super Shine gel polish. It comes in a pot, and this is this particular gel polish has no sticky layer once it's cured. This is one of the first ones that I grabbed, so that's the reason why I'm using it. You can certainly use any black that you want to. You don't have to use a non-tacky layer polish for this. And then we're going to carefully paint within those lines. We're not going to right between the gold outlines. We want to be as careful as possible to stay within the lines. And look at it from different angles, because sometimes you can see some missed spots that you might not be able to see from one angle. And once that's completely filled in, I went ahead and I cured that completely. And now we're ready to go ahead and fill in the rest of our areas here. I'm going to start with that deep blue. And then I'm going to kind of start and kind of push it up there into the corner. Again, I'm not going outside the lines. I'm going to take a little bit of that cerulean blue and we're going to lightly blend into a nice little transition area there. Give it kind of a shaded look. And I am going in and curing each one of these areas, just because these pigments can tend to kind of travel around in the gel, so I want to lock those in place by curing them. Again, do a little blend, a little transition area there. Now we're going to come in with our green. And we're going to transition it, blend it into the next area. We're going to cure that. I'm going to come in with a little bit of that Haute pink. Maybe do a little bit of red there near the bottom, transition that in. And we're going to do our yellow in the center. And finally our little circle area there. Give it a little dimension with using a little bit of the darker blue around the edges. And we're going to cure that. And now we're ready to top coat. I'm going to use the Accent Snow Wipe. You can certainly use any top coat that you like here. One tip is, because that pigment over the gold pigment is basically loose, just kind of sticking into that tacky layer, you want to use a very, very light hand, very, very feather-light touch when you're applying your pigment. And once that's done, you cure it for the standard time, the recommended time. And you can see how beautifully that came out. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the demo. If you have any comments or questions for me, go ahead and leave them down at the bottom. I will get to them as soon as I can. If you like the video, go ahead and like and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you guys later.